You're such a blessing, Sarah, my mom gushed, her voice thick with admiration. I don't know how we'd manage without you. I said nothing. My fork hovered midair, paused just inches from my plate. Across the table, Sarah gave her signature smile, poised, effortless, smug. She didn't even glance at me. She didn't have to. It was like she knew I wouldn't speak up. Like she counted on it. My name is Julia Mitchell. I'm 27, an elementary school teacher, and the invisible backbone of this family. For as long as I can remember, I've been the one holding things together behind the scenes, quietly, steadily. The one who patches up what falls apart. But no one ever notices. That spotlight? It's always belonged to Sarah. Sarah, my older sister, the golden girl. The magnetic one. The one who walks into a room and effortlessly collects praise like it's her birthright. Me? I've been the reliable one. The one who says yes when no one else will. The one who gives. For years, I'd been sending money home, helping with mom's prescriptions, covering dad's treatments, scraping by while Sarah wore the crown of the family savior. I never complained. Never corrected the narrative. But something shifted recently. Something in me just broke. I didn't plan it. There was no dramatic confrontation or emotional farewell. I was in my tiny apartment, staring at my near-empty checking account after paying rent. I looked at the automatic transfer I usually sent to my parents, and I canceled it. Just like that. No warning. No announcement. At first, nothing changed. Weeks passed, and no one said a word. I actually started to hope. Maybe they'd figured it out, I thought. Maybe they finally realized it wasn't Sarah paying those bills. But then the calls started. First, my mom asked why the pharmacy hadn't received payment. Then my dad mentioned a notice from the insurance company. Still, Sarah stayed silent, probably hoping no one would connect the dots. And somehow, even through the frustration, I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. The breaking point came on a quiet Sunday afternoon. My mom called, her voice strained and clipped. Julia, your father's insurance payment is overdue again. Sarah said she's been on top of it, but something's off. Do you know if there's a problem with her account? For the first time, there was doubt in her voice. A tiny crack in the perfect image of Sarah. My heart pounded. I could have blurted out everything right then. I wanted to. But instead, I forced down the truth and replied, maybe you should ask Sarah directly. It wasn't much, but it felt like a small act of defiance. I wasn't going to spell it out for them anymore. I wasn't going to hand over the truth just so they could ignore it again. If they were going to see Sarah clearly, they'd have to do it on their own. Still, the guilt clung to me like static. Every time my parents called, sounding worried or confused, I felt that old weight settle on my shoulders. Even knowing it wasn't my fault didn't stop the ache. As the weeks went on, the cracks deepened. Mom called more frequently, more frantic each time. Sarah says she's working on it, she said, exasperated, but the hospital keeps calling about unpaid balances. Your father can't miss another round of treatment, Julia. And all the while, Sarah's Instagram told a different story. Photos of rooftop cocktails. Designer shopping bags. Lavish brunches. Not a hint of struggle, just a curated reel of indulgence and ease. She was still playing the role of the golden daughter, while our parents bore the cost, and I bore the silence. Then came the family dinner. My mom insisted we all sit down to talk things through, which, in our house, usually meant giving Sarah the floor while I quietly nodded and kept the peace. I knew how this would go. Sarah would spin some carefully rehearsed story, and I'd sit there, the forgotten daughter, blamed for breathing too loud. Except this time, it didn't go the way any of us expected. Dad, who usually faded into the background during these talks, looked Sarah dead in the eye and asked, "You've been handling the bills for months, Sarah. So tell me, why are the payments behind?" The color drained from her face. For the first time, I saw a fissure in her perfect mask. She stammered something about unexpected costs and a temporary situation, but it was clear she hadn't anticipated being questioned. Before Sarah could flounder further, my mom jumped in, her tone razor-sharp. "She's doing her best, Robert. Maybe you should try supporting her instead of grilling her like she's a criminal. And Julia," she added, her eyes turning to me with familiar disdain, "maybe it's time you stop sitting on the sidelines and actually help. You never do anything for us anyway." The words slapped me harder than I was ready for. For a second, I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened with that old, familiar ache, years of being overlooked suddenly collapsing into this one moment. I looked at Sarah, hoping for something. A flicker of guilt, maybe even honesty. But she wouldn't even meet my eyes. And Dad? Silent again. They really believed it. That Sarah had been the one holding everything together. That I was just some selfish bystander. My hands trembled as I steadied them against the edge of the table. "That's not true," I said, my voice hoarse but steady. "I've been helping. I've been the one paying those bills, for years." The room fell deathly quiet. The air felt thick, like it might crush me. Mom scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Don't be ridiculous, Julia. Sarah's been carrying this family on her back. You haven't lifted a finger. Now you're trying to take credit for her sacrifices?" My stomach turned. I couldn't believe this was happening. I turned to Sarah again. Still nothing. I swallowed hard. "It's the truth. For the last 3 years, I've sent money every month to cover your bills. Sarah hasn't paid a single cent. I stopped recently, because I got tired of being invisible while she played the hero." Sarah's head snapped up, her expression caught between panic and outrage. "What is wrong with you, Julia?" she said, her voice quivering just enough to sound sincere. "Why are you making up lies? Are you really that desperate for attention?" I stared at her, disbelief flooding through me. "Are you seriously going to sit there and pretend I'm lying?" I asked, my voice cracking. "I have bank statements. I have receipts. 3 years' worth. You really want me to pull them out right now?" Sarah let out a hollow laugh. "Receipts? You mean your little fantasy files?" she sneered. "This is pathetic. You're jealous because Mom and Dad actually value what I do. You've never been part of this family in any real way. And now you're trying to rewrite the story because it's the only way you'll matter." That did it. Any lingering guilt I had, any hesitation, melted away. Because for the first time it was clear, Sarah didn't just lie, she believed she was untouchable. But not anymore. Rewriting history? I snapped, my voice rising despite my best efforts to stay composed. "You've been taking credit for everything I've done, Sarah. I'm the one who's been sending money month after month while you were off spending your paychecks on spa weekends and luxury vacations." Sarah crossed her arms tightly, her eyes flicking to our mom for support. "You see, Mom? This is exactly what I mean. Julia always plays the victim. She's just trying to tear me down because she can't handle the fact that I've actually been here for you." Her tone was syrupy sweet, but I caught it, the slight crack in her voice. She was nervous, even if she wouldn't admit it. Then she turned her fire back toward me. "If you've been so helpful, Julia, then why stay silent for 3 years? Why now?" "Let me guess, because it's not about helping. It's about credit. Admit it. You're mad I'm the one getting praise, and you just can't stand it." I opened my mouth, but Mom beat me to it. Her arms folded tightly, her expression skeptical. "Sarah's right. Why wouldn't you tell us earlier, Julia? If you were really doing all this, why keep it a secret?" "I don't know, it just doesn't add up." The air in the room thickened, and I felt my cheeks burning. Their disbelief, their immediate willingness to side with Sarah, hit harder than I'd expected. I took a breath, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Because I wasn't doing it for the recognition," I said quietly but firmly. "I did it because I wanted to help. I didn't need applause." And yeah, maybe I should have said something earlier, but that doesn't make it right for Sarah to lie about it. Why are we acting like that part doesn't matter? Sarah rolled her eyes like I was being dramatic. Oh please. You're making it sound like I forced you into silence or something. If any of this is even true, which I seriously doubt, then it's your fault for never speaking up. Don't try to flip this and make me the villain just because you're bitter. Dad, who'd been silent until now, finally spoke. His voice was calm, but his words stung. Julia, I just don't understand. If this really happened, why wouldn't you say anything all this time? I looked around at the people who were supposed to know me best and felt like a stranger in my own family. Sarah's smug little smile only made it worse. Still, I kept my focus and turned to her, meeting her glare head-on. I didn't say anything, I began, my voice steadier now, because I was happy to help Mom and Dad. I wasn't doing it for praise. I never expected anything in return. But when I found out you were claiming it was you, that you let them believe you were the one making sacrifices, I was stunned. So I stayed quiet. I wanted to see how long you'd keep up the lie. Sarah's face flushed with anger, her voice snapping like a whip. That's insane. You're saying you let me take the credit, sat back for years without a word, and now you're trying to publicly humiliate me? You chose to stay silent. This is on you. I waited, I said, cutting her off, because I wanted to give you a chance to come clean. To do the right thing. But you didn't. You just kept letting everyone believe a lie while I drained my savings and restructured my entire life to keep our parents afloat. I turned back to our parents, my voice soft but unwavering. I didn't want to have this conversation. But I won't let her rewrite history anymore. I deserve better than that. They both sat there, stunned, eyes flicking between us, confused, unsure, shaken. And for the first time I saw it, the flicker of doubt in Sarah's perfect story. I sat up straighter, my voice clear and unwavering, even as anger churned inside me. I have every receipt, Mom. Bank statements, payment confirmations, 3 years' worth. I could show them to you right now, but that's not what this is about. I turned toward Sarah, meeting her gaze head-on. What I want is for you to admit it. Just be honest for once. She crossed her arms, her posture stiff, her expression carefully blank. I have no idea what you're talking about, she said, cool and dismissive. But I caught it, the slight tremor in her voice. I've been handling things. If you have proof, then show it, Julia. Otherwise, stop inventing drama just to tear me down. Her words hit like ice, but I held my ground. Why should I have to show it? I asked, my voice sharper now. You know the truth. And if you had even a shred of decency, you'd say it yourself instead of pretending I'm the problem. My dad leaned forward, his face pale and drawn. Mom's eyes flicked between the two of us, full of uncertainty, her silence louder than any words. And Sarah sat there like a statue, jaw clenched, refusing to budge. I pushed my chair back, the leg scraping across the floor with a loud screech. I stood, my hands trembling, but my voice stayed firm. I'm done, Sarah. If you're going to keep lying, I won't waste another second trying to get through to you. We both know what you did. I looked at her one last time, heart heavy but steady. If there's anything left in you that resembles a decent person, you'll tell them the truth. Until then, don't call me. Don't text me. I'm done. She scoffed, rolling her eyes. Oh please, Julia. Don't be so dramatic. This is ridiculous. The words cut deep, but I didn't flinch. Without another word, I grabbed my coat, walked out, and shut the door behind me. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was choosing me, not their version of me, not the role they expected me to play. Just me. I could have ended the argument with a single move, pulled out my phone, flashed the evidence, silenced the room. But that wasn't what I needed. This wasn't about winning. It was about integrity. I wanted Sarah to own what she'd done. I wanted her to be the one to say it, to admit the lie without being forced. But she didn't. The months that followed were cold and quiet. The silence between me and my parents stretched like a frozen lake, thin and tense beneath our carefully polite conversations. They stopped asking questions. I stopped volunteering answers. Everything between us became shallow, small talk, quick goodbyes, half-hearted check-ins. I knew why. I'd cracked the illusion they built around Sarah. And they weren't ready to see the truth. I tried not to blame them, but it still stung. Sarah, on the other hand, disappeared completely from my world. I didn't reach out, didn't respond, didn't attend a single event where I knew she'd show up. Not even Mom's birthday dinner. I couldn't sit across from her and pretend everything was fine, not when she was still living a lie. It wasn't worth the emotional toll. Instead, I poured my energy into something else, myself. I started rebuilding the parts of me I'd ignored for too long, my peace, my joy, my boundaries. And finally, slowly, I began to breathe again. It didn't take long before Sarah's carefully constructed image began to crumble. Whispers spread, missed car payments, cancelled brunches, fewer designer bags showing up in her Instagram feed. Even her posts started to change, cryptic captions about unexpected challenges and tight months. She was struggling. And I didn't need to guess why. Now that the truth was out, she'd been forced to actually pay the bills she once took credit for. Part of me wanted to feel bad for her. But I couldn't. She made this mess, rode the benefits of my sacrifices for years, and smiled while doing it. If she was finally feeling the weight of the responsibility she'd faked all along, then maybe, just maybe, this was justice in motion. It was a quiet Saturday afternoon when she showed up at my door without warning. I barely recognized her. Her makeup was smudged, her hair tied back in a tired bun, and her eyes, usually sharp and smug, were dull, rimmed with exhaustion. She looked like someone who hadn't slept in days. "Can we talk?" she asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. I hesitated. Everything in me screamed to shut the door and walk away. But something in her expression, the desperation, the vulnerability, made me pause. Against my better judgment, I stepped aside and motioned her in. She sank onto the couch like someone carrying bricks on her back. I remained standing, arms folded tightly across my chest. "I'm in trouble," she admitted, her voice cracking. "I can't keep up. I'm behind on everything. I don't know what to do." I didn't move. Didn't blink. "That's not my problem," I said flatly. She flinched, and for a fleeting moment, I felt the echo of something close to guilt, but it vanished as quickly as it came. "You built this," I continued. "You don't get to come crying now that it's falling apart." Her eyes grew wide, panic beginning to surface. "Julia, please. I know I messed up. But I cut her off, voice sharper than I meant. "Messed up? You lied, Sarah. To our parents, to me, to everyone. You let me carry the weight while you soaked in the praise. And now you're here, asking me to fix it? No. I'm done being your backup plan." Her voice cracked with emotion. "Please. I don't have anyone else. Things are really bad, and I don't know where else to turn." She wiped at her cheeks, her hands shaking. "I know I was wrong. I know I wasn't fair to you. But you're still my sister." I stared at her, this version of Sarah that looked nothing like the polished persona she clung to. There was pity in me somewhere, buried under the years of betrayal. But it wasn't enough. "You want my help?" I asked, voice cold and measured. "After everything?" She nodded quickly, her eyes red, pleading. "I'm trying, Julia. I swear I'm trying to fix it." I let out a low, humorless laugh. "You want to fix it? Then start by telling Mom and Dad the truth. Admit what you did. All of it. Until you do that, I have nothing to offer you." She fell silent. The quiet between us stretched unbearably long. I watched her fidget, search for an excuse, a defense, anything. But nothing came. Finally, she straightened, her voice shifting, colder, defensive. "Look, I've been making the payments now, okay," she said, her tone clipped. "So technically, I'm not lying anymore. I am doing the work, just like everyone thinks I have." I narrowed my eyes. There it was, the old Sarah, clawing her way back to comfort. But I wasn't falling for it again. The chatter died down as Sarah tapped her glass, the familiar clinking sound pulling every eye in the room toward her. The buzz of conversation dissolved into silence. A few cousins looked up from their plates, my uncle paused mid-laugh, and my parents turned toward her with mild curiosity. I didn't move from my spot by the wall, arms folded tightly across my chest, watching her like a hawk. Her face was pale, her posture tense, but her voice was steady, almost too steady. "I just want to say a few words," she began, forcing a small smile. "First, thank you all for being here. It's good to see everyone together again."